If you have ever felt like the rules of the game have just completely changed without anyone sending you the memo, you are definitely not alone.
Oh, absolutely not alone.
Right. There's this very specific feeling a lot of men have right now. It's this gnawing sense of being erased or silenced or even pathologized just for being, well, men.
Yeah, it's like the goalposts aren't just moving anymore, they are actively being dismantled.
Exactly. And before we dive into this rabbit hole, I want to ask you to hit that like and subscribe button right now. Seriously, do it now. Because the deep dive we're about to embark on is going to challenge a lot of comfortable narratives.
It really is. It's a conversation that's becoming much harder to find in public spaces without facing immediate backlash.
Which is exactly why you're going to want to stay in the loop for this one. Today, we're digging into a source that is less of a standard nonfiction book and honestly more of a manifesto.
Definitely a manifesto.
It's called The New Order: Resurgence of Masculine Strength, copyright 2025 by Conrad Riker. And let me tell you, Riker is not interested in being polite.
Not at all. He frames the whole text as a survival guide for men.
Right, in a society that he claims has been captured lock, stock, and barrel by feminist and Marxist ideologies.
Ideologies that he argues are actively suppressing biological masculinity.
Now, I need to say this right up front so we are completely clear. We are unpacking the data, the studies, and the history Riker lays out.
We are reporting on the source material.
Exactly. We are not endorsing these viewpoints or taking political sides here. Our goal is impartially conveying the ideas and arguments contained in the book so you can understand what's driving this movement.
It's a dense, aggressive text. He covers the entire life cycle of the modern male.
From the military to education to family courts and the dating market. But if you find this discussion fascinating, if you are nodding along thinking, finally, someone said it, you need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now to buy this ebook.
Yeah, we can only scratch the surface here. Riker has the full arsenal of data and legal strategies in the actual text.
So keep that in mind. Our mission today is to trace this history of institutional capture he describes and explore his blueprint for reclaiming male identity.
Let's start with the absolute foundation of his argument, which he calls biology versus ideology.
Right. He has this line that just jumps off the page right at the start. Biology isn't bigotry, it's ballistics.
It's a punchy line, but he backs it up with hard neuroscience.
He argues we've tried to pretend men and women are identical, especially in high-stakes environments like the military, and that it's getting people killed.
Yeah, he cites a 2017 study out of Utah focusing on rapid targeting. The researchers looked at split-second decisions under extreme stress.
Basically, combat scenarios where you have milliseconds to decide if something is a threat.
Exactly. And Riker points out that when men identify a threat, their parietal lobes light up immediately.
Okay, for those of us who skipped med school, what is the parietal lobe actually doing?
It's the part of the brain responsible for action, spatial positioning, and physical manipulation. It's the do-something center. It bypasses higher-level reasoning to just initiate movement.
Wow, okay.
But when they monitored the female brain under the exact same stress conditions, the activation happened in the language centers.
Wait, so biologically, the female brain was trying to, what, narrate the threat?
That is Raker's interpretation of the imaging. He argues the female brain processes the stress by putting it into words or context before responding.
Which, in a normal social setting, is great. It builds community.
Right. But Riker argues that in a combat scenario, that microsecond of narration is the difference between life and death.
And he connects this directly to what's happening at Quantico with the Marine Corps. The data he pulls on the infantry officer course is wild.
The qualification rates.
Yeah. He mentions the historical rates were 89% for men and only 34% for women.
And this is where his ideology argument comes in. Riker claims that instead of accepting that physiological difference as a reality of sexual dimorphism, the military leadership decided the standard itself was the problem.
So they lowered the standards to achieve an outcome of equality.
Right. He argues this is the literal definition of institutional capture when the mission of winning wars becomes secondary to the ideology of diversity.
He gets very specific about equipment, too. Redesigning pistol grips for smaller hand sizes.
Yes, and the European military academies.
Honestly, I thought he was being satirical at first.
The emotional marksmanship.
Yes, I checked the footnote. Norway and Germany introducing emotional marksmanship.
I had to double check that source as well, but it is real. Riker describes training modules focusing on breathing exercises and harmonizing with the weapon's energy.
Instead of the actual physics of windage, elevation, and recoil.
He frames it as the feminization of violence, trying to soften the harsh reality of ballistics.
It sounds like they are trying to therapy their way into hitting a target.
Yeah. And he contrasts that soft approach with the raw data on transgender athletes, bringing it back to the biology is ballistics point
The study from the British Journal of Sports Medicine.
from 2024. The data showed that even after a full year of hormone suppression, transgender women retained massive advantages in muscle mass and hemoglobin levels.
Hemoglobin is red blood cells,
Yeah.
right? Oxygen carrying capacity.
Exactly. More endurance and power output. Riker uses this to argue you cannot identify your way out of bone density.
Reality doesn't care about your feelings.
And his point is that ignoring biological reality ruins women's sports, but in a military context, it compromises national security.
But he argues this erasure of biological reality starts way before a guy is old enough to enlist. He calls it the Great Rewiring.
The education system. This section is a really disturbing narrative about the war on boys,
He basically says the modern classroom penalizes masculine behavior from age 5.
which brings up the story of Tommy and the Pop-Tart gun.
Right. A kid chews a pastry into the shape of a pistol, says pew pew, and gets suspended under zero tolerance policies.
It's a classic example, but Riker uses it to illustrate a broader pathology. He says normal male energy risk, roughhousing, turning things into weapons, is now diagnosed as a disorder.
It used to be boys being boys. Now it's ADHD.
And the demographics of teachers play a massive role here.
He cites that 98% of public school teachers in early education are female.
He argues this creates a monoculture that naturally favors female learning styles sitting still, verbal communication, agreeable behavior.
And if you're a boy who learns by doing, moving, or competing.
Then you're a problem to be medicated. But the most interesting part was the Stanford study on competition.
The chemistry of it.
Yes. Boys' brains literally release dopamine, the reward chemical, during competitive scenarios. They thrive on knowing who is first and who is last.
But schools have banned that.
Completely, moving toward collaborative learning pods and participation trophies.
Riker argues that by removing winners and losers, schools are starving boys of their natural neurochemical motivation to learn.
He links it directly to the literacy gap. Boys aren't dumb, they're just bored by a system that hates their natural drive.
And there was that University of Michigan study from 2019 about grading bias. They took identical essays word for word and just changed the names at the top.
The results were statistically significant. The essays attached to female names get better grades.
Riker calls it education as indoctrination, training boys to suppress their nature just to survive the system.
Which leads them right into the workplace, where they run into the double bind.
The corporate machine trap.
Yeah.
What exactly is the double bind?
It's a psychological trap. Men are told to man up, to be decisive, to get the job done and provide utility.
Right.
But if they show leadership or dominance in a way that feels too masculine, they are instantly labeled toxic or aggressive.
He brings up the Google Memo incident as patient zero for this.
He uses it as a case study in the suppression of data. The author of the memo argued that biological differences in occupational interests might explain the gender gap in engineering.
That men are generally more interested in things and systems, while women are more interested in people.
And for suggesting that backed up data, he was fired.
Riker says mentioning biological reality is treated as heresy in the corporate world.
He also introduces the glass cliff. We always hear about the glass ceiling, but he flips this concept.
I hadn't heard the glass cliff used this way before.
He argues that when men are at the helm and businesses collapse, they are blamed personally. But if a woman fails in a leadership role, the system rushes to say it wasn't her fault.
And he connects this to ESG scores, environmental, social, and governance.
He views ESG as a weapon against male-coded industries. Sectors like oil, gas, and construction deal in physical reality, but are heavily penalized by these scores for being green.
While consulting firms that produce nothing but PowerPoints get high scores.
It's an economic attack on the types of jobs men tend to do.
He notes a Stanford study on workaholism, too. Men working long hours are referred to therapy for work-life balance issues.
Whereas women doing the exact same thing are called empowered.
And algorithms enforce this narrative. Shadow banning.
Yes. He claims platforms like Meta actively downrank hashtags like fatherhood and men are good while amplifying toxic masculinity.
Making positive representations of men invisible. It feels like everywhere you turn in this book, a system is working against the average guy.
But he saves his harshest critique for the family courts, the destruction of fatherhood.
This was the most gut-wrenching part for me.
He discusses the tender years doctrine, a 19th century concept assuming mothers are naturally better suited to care for kids.
He argues that while it's technically off the books, it still rules judges' minds, making fathers optional.
Wallets with visitation rights, as he puts it.
Yeah.
And he brings in Harvard stats on the fatherless crisis.
Fatherless boys are 5 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD and much more likely to abuse drugs.
Riker's point is the state has stepped in to replace the father financially, but it can't replace the father's role in discipline and development.
He mentions the Johnson case in Michigan. A father jailed for missing child support, even though the mother was actively blocking him from seeing the kids.
Parental alienation. Riker argues the legal system allows mothers to block access without consequence, calling it a civil matter.
While the father is held to the absolute letter of criminal law regarding money.
Exactly. He argues shared custody fails, citing a 68% collapse rate because the system is designed to create dependency on the state.
He even compared data from Sweden and the US showing single-parent households correlate directly with youth depression.
And if a guy survives the courts or avoids them, he has to deal with the dating market. Riker pulls no punches here.
He talks about the marriage strike, men just opting out because the risk-reward ratio is broken.
And the economics of relationships, specifically hypergamy.
The evolutionary drive for women to marry up in status or resources.
Right. But modern economic reality means women are increasingly out-earning men. So the math just doesn't work, leading to mass dissatisfaction.
He uses dating app data to prove it. Hinge and Occupant stats.
Women swipe right on only 14% of men. The top 20% of men get 80% of the attention.
A brutal Pareto distribution, which leads to what he calls the simp economy.
A massive transfer of wealth from lonely men to women online. He claims men spend $12 billion on parasocial relationships like OnlyFans.
Paying for attention from women who offer no commitment.
And he contrasts this with the nice guy trap. Chivalry has been weaponized. Men who try to be traditional are viewed as predators trying to get something or just weak.
So men retreat to the simp economy or drop out.
Right.
So we've got the military, schools, work, courts, and dating all stacked against men. But he pivots to a solution. The New Order.
The resistance. His solution is bypassing captured institutions entirely. The red pill awakening via alternative media.
Podcasts, encrypted chats on Signal, decentralized groups like Mendeo.
He calls for building explicitly male-only institutions. The Shed, dad squads.
Gyms or private clubs that exclude women. And he's clear this isn't out of hatred for women.
No, it's to foster brotherhood without the policing of tone that happens in mixed spaces. He points to the War Room Discord servers and the Men's League in the UK.
The lawfare strategy was the most fascinating part to me, using the system's own rules against it.
Using the 14th Amendment and Title IX to sue for equal funding.
Like the boys in trades versus girls in STEM lawsuits.
Exactly. If the law requires equality, men should sue every time a program excludes them. He proposes a men's legal defense fund to flood the courts with equity claims.
He also touches on health and the wellness industrial complex.
Arguing wellness is marketed only to women, he contrasts government funding for prostate cancer versus breast cancer to show the disparity in how society values male life.
And he brings up stoicism.
Reclaiming stoicism not as toxic repression, but as a necessary survival mechanism. Men need to be the rock in the storm.
Calculating the best path forward by suppressing immediate emotional reactions.
Yes. He frames the whole book as a manifesto telling men to reject the apology tour.
Rebuilding society based on competence, hierarchy, and biological reality.
He believes society functions best when biological differences are leveraged, not suppressed.
It's a massive cultural call to arms.
Yeah.
And he leaves us with a really provocative thought about history.
The pendulum. History is cyclical. If we are at the peak of suppressing masculinity, the swing back is simple physics. It's inevitable.
And he asks you, the reader, when that pendulum swings back and society realizes it needs strong men again, are you prepared to lead?
Or will you still be waiting for permission?
Are you waiting for permission? That's the question you need to mull over. Look, we have covered a massive amount of ground here today, but this deep dive only scratches the surface.
The New Order goes so much deeper into the stats and the actual battle plans.
If you want the full blueprint, you need to support the author. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now and buy The New Order, Resurgence of Masculine Strength.
And for ongoing uncensored analysis, follow the author on Substack at Conrad Riker.
Don't let this just be another deep dive you casually listen to. If this resonated with you, take action. Like the show, subscribe, and go get the book. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.